Hello and welcome back to Molby On The Spot. I'm your less than healthy host, Trev Downey, joined, of course, by the legend that is Jan Molby for yet another look at the week that was and the week that is to be for Liverpool. Good evening, Jan.
Good evening, Trevor, and not good being not able to shake that cold, hey, Trevor.
Yeah, it's a pain, man. It's a pain. I don't know what it is, but anyway, look, like I said to you earlier on, it's not enough to stop me doing things. It's just stopping me doing them as well as I'd like, which is a pain. But anyway, we'll get there. Speaking of getting there, it looks as if Liverpool have made some progress in one of the opportunities that remains to them for some glory this season. That's the FA Cup. Now, I know you and I were not as forensic in our analysis of this as we normally would be, but it is fair to say that it was a very heartening performance by all accounts. A couple of lovely goals, quite a strong team that got out there, and for momentum purposes, if nothing else, with the bigger plan of the Champions League and qualification, I guess that's helpful in every regard, Jan.
Yeah, and let's not forget it was a Premier League team that we played and dismissed them quite easy. In many ways, it went a bit like I thought it would. I think we discussed this last week, Trevor. I used to admire Brighton and the way that they used to do things, but I'm no longer sure what way they're heading. And I think that was in evidence on Saturday at Anfield. But we got the job done. You're right. There was some really good goals and potentially some better performance from some individuals that whether we can use that going forward, I don't know. We'll soon find out. But yeah, Saturday was very comfortable.
I'm curious about your change of heart around Brighton. What is it like in terms of some details there that you think has changed? Because clearly they're a very clever, cunning ownership group with a good recruitment policy. I mean, even if you look at a couple of the lads we're being linked with now at the moment, they're also being linked with Brighton. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're copying Brighton's homework, if you know what I mean, when it comes to scouting. They seem to have that down well. And in terms of running it as a business model, also, at least as far as I was aware, Tony Bloom was quite the envy of an awful lot of club owners in that regard. What is it that you see that's different now?
I just think it possibly, if anything, it's become too much of a business. There's come too much emphasis on the players that we bring in. We need them to play them in a team. We need to play them in a team even when they're not possibly ready. And then we need to see if we can offload them as quick as possible. And what you then create, Trevor, is players who don't really want to be at your club.
Yeah.
Players who are promised a dream when they come there. And then if they're still at Brighton 12 or 18 months into the country, go, why am I still here? This is not what you sold me, So I think it's a bit of a, I think Brentford, as it happened, do it much better. I think they managed to remain really, really good. Every time I look at Brentford, I look at a club who wants to be competitive with the funds. Let's not forget, Brentford, it'd be off the top of my head, but they would be in the bottom three of wage bills in the Premier League. But they look like they want to be competitive. Brighton look like a team that wants to be a business. Look, we're going to bring in here, play a bit of nice football, and we're going to sell you. What we do is not important. They never strive for that little bit of glory. You know what I mean? If there's an opportunity to rest 10 players in the FA Cup, they'll do so and just go, well, we concentrate on the Premier League. That's our bread and butter. I just think they've lost a little bit of that. There's no doubt that how they recruit is still very impressive, but I would like them first and foremost to recruit players for them. And then come in and do a job for us. Show us you want to be here. Show us you want to do well for us. And then eventually we'll move on. Instead of this, I'll tell you what, you come here, we're going to move on as quick as we can. And so I just think they've lost a little bit of their magic. You look at Mitoma, we spoke about him. Mitoma is probably one of the players who's disappointed that he's still there. And I think it's shown in his play, isn't it? He's not really hungry as he was. He was a nuisance to play against, but he was a terrific player. And now he's kind of going through the motions because never really got his big move, and I think that's disappointing. I think sometimes if you're not a top team and you've got a group of players who know that their best chance of A, being in the Premier League and B, a little bit of success is to be at your club. I always think it's a bad thing when you've got possibly even half of your squad who think that they'll be better off somewhere else and eventually will be somewhere else. That's why smaller clubs sometimes, like Burnley and whatever, survived for so many years when they did, because all those players knew my only chance of playing in the Premier League is here. So I've got to give it everything to try and keep us here. At Brighton, it's like, so what if you finish 15? So what if you finish 17? I'm going to go. And I've just, it just doesn't sit with me anymore. You know what I mean? And I don't see that at Brentford. I see a whole different attitude at Brentford. I don't think they've been sold the same idea. I think at Brentford, we've been sold the idea, you come here and we'll turn you into a Premier League player. And then we'll see what happens. But first and foremost, you want them out,
Yeah, it's very interesting, that idea of the stepping stone model. It makes it very difficult, you would imagine, for any gaffer, yet alone an inexperienced one, to kind of motivate a squad of players like that, if that has been part of what was sold to them, like, come here, do well for a year and you will get the move to wherever. Even if that is a functional model in and of itself, as you say, it doesn't really lend itself to team unity and structure and consistency and that kind of stuff. A tough gig, I would imagine, Jan, to manage in that sort of a context.
That, to be fair, was the reason I didn't mention the manager. I understand that the manager is under pressure because of lack of results, but I'm not really sure what he's meant to do. Was it some 18 months ago now, they brought a whole load of youngsters in that obviously they're hoping that 3 or 4 of them are going to turn out all right, and I don't quite think that's been the case. For me now, there's also too many that are in and out without being good enough to get the big moves. So they go on loan to various clubs, and some of them go on to the continent, isn't it? So I struggle to judge the manager. I generally do. Although I'm always very reluctant with the models at Brentford and Brighton. You've got to be careful keeping too much praise on the manager or the head coach, because we do know there's a structure in place that is probably stronger than anything else you will have at these football clubs.
Now, Liverpool could have done better for themselves with the draw. They could also have done worse. I'm wondering what you think, because now it starts to become a proper conversation to have. You're that much further in the cup. The opposition in the next round are absolutely beatable. They're not exactly on world-beating form. Yes, it could have been a lower league side, therefore theoretically a weaker side. And when you have someone who's got really nothing going for them, the cup can often offer a little bit of release, and therefore maybe Wolves will be dangerous. I wonder what you make of this draw when you saw it. Was it one of those ones you saw, like, of course we got a Premier League team, when you look around and everybody else gets weaker ones, or were you reasonably content with that draw?
No, not really. I thought it was a pretty tough draw when you consider what's left in the competition. And whatever we think of Wolves, I think they've only lost 3 of the last 10 now. So they found a little bit of form. They're finding something from somewhere to at least, and they are going to go down, but at least to go down with a fight. And that obviously includes playing in the FA Cup and maybe just getting the results or 2 in that competition will lift them as well. So, no, I think it's a tough game. I think the days where you comfortably go to Wolverhampton and beat Wolves are over. I think it'll be a tough game. Of that, I have very little doubt. They've slowly found a structure that works. There's still weaknesses in the team, otherwise they wouldn't be where they are. But they found a structure that, on their day, they can be difficult. If you look at some of the results, I mean, lost at Arsenal in the 95th minute, I think, and going to Old Trafford, I think they got themselves a point, isn't it? So, no, it's not out the equation. And of course, the thing is that the next round of the FA Cup is the weekend before the first leg of the Champions League, where you think, had it been somebody else, we could have rested, maybe 4 or 5. We're not in a position where we could rest 7, 8 or 9 because of the injuries, but we might have been able to rest 4 or 5. And that might just have been important.
I think it's a really good point you make, and just so people can see that. So our schedule for the next while, obviously we'll be speaking about Forest in a bit of detail later. We have a full week then, or nearly a full week, to the Saturday game at Anfield against West Ham. And here you go. We play the Premier League game against Wolves on the 3rd of March. And then we play the FA Cup game against Wolves. And then we play the Champions League game against whoever, the away fixture of it looks like. And then we have Spurs at home on the 15th. So wedged in between the game on the 3rd of March against Wolves at Molineux, we have, and the 15th of March against Spurs at home, we have the FA Cup game and the Champions League game. And like you said, start dividing those 4 fixtures into those very few days from the 3rd to the 15th. And that's starting to look tough, Jan. That is not anyone's idea of a kind of situation that would be preferable when it comes to, planning out your fixtures for the season. I'm like, it gets demanding. And all of a sudden I wonder, people's excitement that moving on in this competition, is it now tempered by the reality that there's a good chance that the manager will now look at that and go, yeah, I can't prioritize that. Clearly, I can't prioritize that. I don't know, what do you think?
And also, if you look, Trevor, it's, obviously we wanted to be where we are in the Champions League, so we're guaranteed to have the second leg at home. But that means in that run, we got 3 away games. Not 3 away games or 3 away games, and whatever way you wrap it up, people will look at them, and I don't know who we're going to get in the Champions League, but I assume that who we get in the Champions League, we will also look upon as being a winnable game. So all 3 of them will be winnable, but there's still 3 away games. And it'll still prove a difficult task, because that Wolves twice and whoever we play in the Champions League will be up for it. It'll be a massive, massive thing for them, So it is tough. It just adds to it all. And yeah, on the spot, we'll probably look at that game and go, can I afford to, can I all of a sudden? I mean, as much as he said, I want to take it more serious and I don't want to do what we did last year against Plymouth, is he in a position to do that? It'd be interesting to see, that's for sure.
4 games in 12 days. That's such a big ask. And it's look, again, it's the price of being, inverted commas, successful. So we see how that goes. But I think we should just park the FA Cup at that stage, unless there's something you want to say in terms of any of the performances coming out of it. Because the one I wanted to focus on was Curtis Jones, but that's for a reason. Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to look at the squad with you in terms of the overhaul that it might need, because I think it's going to be far greater than people think. And Curtis Jones is one of those names. Was there any other takeaway from the FA Cup that you just wanted to mention, or in terms of a performance or something that struck you before we move on?
No, I think it was generally, Curtis Jones played ever so well at right back. Obviously, what we spoke about last week, Trevor, when we did the podcast, we've developed a phobia about playing Joe Gomez. It doesn't matter who's unavailable, Joe Gomez just doesn't play. I think Curtis did quite well. Szoboszlai scored a fantastic goal. Mo was involved a little bit more than what we have seen. But as I said before, I don't think any of all that will all of a sudden make me think, here we go, we're going to get Mo of the old back now, or we're going to be clearer in where we get the best from Curtis Jones. Although I want to say one thing about the FA Cup, Trevor. It's become a struggle, hasn't it? The FA Cup as a whole has become a struggle, hasn't it? I think football fans want to take the FA Cup back to where it belongs. But I think the biggest problem is with the clubs. I just don't get it, Trevor. Hull City draw Chelsea. How many changes did you make, Trevor? Hull City.
I didn't actually see this in terms of the squads. Go on, tell me.
10.
Oh, Christ. Really?
Yeah. So Hull City draw Chelsea and they make 10 changes. And there's more, they all, so many. Fulham made 10 changes and Oxford made 9, and they were all after. So what I'm saying is that the FA, and to a certain extent the fans, are fighting to keep the FA Cup what it is. And the only people that can make a real difference is the clubs, yeah. And they go, we're not sending our first team to play Chelsea. Really? That's Hull City. Oxford, they got knocked out by Sunderland thing. They made 8 or 9 changes. That's just, Trevor, come on. It's this kind of behaviour and treatment of the FA Cup that might just shut the door on it one day. It's not just, everybody's trying with the FA Cup on it. The FA are aware that the FA Cup used to be the easiest seller in the world, and it was just rolled out, and everybody wanted a bit of it. Over the last few years, they've had to work really, really hard. And now the clubs go, but we're not interested.
Do you think it was a sort of death by 1,000 cuts, or do you think a lot of people trace it back to, whether rightly or wrongly, they trace it back to the the Manchester United era of supremacy, where they were deemed to have not taken the competition seriously on a couple of occasions, despite the fact that they won a couple of doubles and all the rest of it. And then you'd see the people who used to mimic Ferguson, like your Boltons under Sam Allardyce, doing something similar. And there was a cynicism then that it came along with it, because people started to say, well, Premier League, like you just said, is the ultimate. We need to maintain our position here. That's all that matters. And then I don't know if it went away a little bit or if that just took hold as a kind of a cynical way of looking at things from there on out. And I don't know if you can necessarily blame clubs who are in a dubious position in the Premier League for wanting to cling on to any hope they have of keeping that position. But like you say, when it comes to other clubs doing the same, yeah, I wonder what is. Do you think it's the same cynicism that's behind that? Are those clubs thinking, well, our league position, whatever that league happens to be, is the most important thing for us?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned, some championship clubs there. I mean, obviously, whole aspirations of minimum getting the playoffs, and Oxford are fighting against relegation. So I kind of get that, but it's football. Football keeps telling us, Trevor, and Mikel Arteta and Arsenal will know this better than most, talking about a trophy. Yeah, because that's what we're labeling now at Arteta, isn't it? He needs to win a trophy. Yeah, but there's so many other clubs who are show no interest in winning, and I don't get where that comes from. We had smaller squads, but certainly at the start of my Liverpool career and before my Liverpool career, when they played in Europe, they also had 4 competitions to compete with. And I don't know, there was just a competitiveness right across the club, from the fans to the board, all the way down to the manager and the players. What are we doing? We're playing in a cup competition that, what's at the end of it? There's a cup final and a trophy. Let's go, and really, now they've squad to 25 plus. You can have all your young, promising players outside that squad of 25. You got so many players, and still, yeah. And do you know what I thought, Trevor? And I still think footballers are meant to play football. And now some managers do everything for footballers not to play football, and I generally don't get that. And Joe Gomez, to be fair, is one of them. We do everything not to play Joe Gomez because of an eventuality, whatever. So when we go through the list after, minutes, Trevor, playing football, people said, when I left the game, what will you miss the most? And I said, never mind the dressing room and all that. I said, I will miss playing, and I'll be able to play with my mates, but it will never be the same. It'll never be that, that challenge and in front of people, and, not a case of being able to show yourself off and whatever, but just, that environment and whatever, isn't it? So this thing about, players not playing football, Trevor, wow.
Do you think it's crept into the psyche of the contemporary player, especially the ones who are in with a shout of a first team place at a top club, that, yeah, I need to spare myself here? Has this ideas around periodization and other, I don't know if maybe fad is the wrong word, let's say systems, have taken hold with people, and an awful lot of what lads our age might think about lads that age, that there's a sort of a costed nature, a reluctance to take a risk, that is also crept into the playing staff. Because I like what you were saying there. I think you take it back a few years, lads just want to play, they want to be on the pitch. And I wonder now if there are certain lads who are kind of precious about themselves as well and don't mind maybe not being included. Is that maybe part of the modern player psyche?
120%, Trevor.
Right.
That is 120% correct, in that there is players, because players, I believe, are brainwashed into believing that you got to be careful. So it probably starts off with you growing physically, as a human being. You go through a stage where you're growing. So they'll go, you're growing, so you've got to be careful, you've got to manage your minutes here. My argument is with that, Trevor, is that if you didn't have to train as much as they do, they could play more games. So when I was a youth team footballer, I trained twice a week and played once a week. Yeah, that was more than enough. You know, I didn't need to be an Olympic runner at 15, 16, or 14 years of age. Yeah, I needed to play football at the level that people played football at. You know, and at the tempo that people played at. You know, so training twice a week and playing football was enough. You know, and now I'm thinking the emphasis on training. You know, training is everything. Training is important, but it's not everything. Playing games is everything. And people will tell you, 95% of all ex-footballers will tell you that, Trevor. Fuck's sake, playing is everything. You know, I don't. You know, I've never ever heard anyone say, "Oh, I missed this," and we know with the training, or you just hear people, "Yeah, I miss playing. I miss playing football." You know, and when they say football, they're talking about the games. You know, so I think the footballers are brainwashed at an early age that we got to be careful. I kind of get it that some stands will go, and not everybody's designed to play 50 or 60 games a year. So I sometimes get is that, but surely, you know, you can play more. And going back to Joe Gomez, you know, people go, well, there's evidence, Jan, in it. If I was Joe Gomez, and let's say I've had the same career as Joe Gomez, and the evidence is that I might not be able to last, I would still want to play next week, hoping that it would change, hoping that my fortunes would change. You know, and the only way I can find out if I can play 15 games consecutive is by playing or by trying, you know, not by being held back. So that's my little rant about playing.
I love it. It's almost like the polar opposite of a guy who I know you will have admired, a contemporary of yours back in the day, Paul McGrath, who famously barely trained at all so that he could play. And it's almost as if the priority has swung completely back the other way now. And now you have a situation like you just mentioned with Gomez, where you have a lad who will be there ticking all the boxes Monday to Friday, but not sure we can risk him on a Saturday. Yeah, it's the polar opposite. It really is. It's remarkable to see. And like you say, of course, people will pull up valid arguments, but I don't know. I think the players wanting to play thing is still there with the majority of them, you would imagine. And
do you know what we get asked a lot, Trevor? Do you have any regrets? Yeah,
of course. Yeah, of course.
And by that, they mean transfers, possible potential transfer that didn't come off, clubs that you could have joined and whatever. But the big thing for players is always, you know, not always, but a lot of them would say they didn't play enough games, you know, for whatever reason, but didn't play enough games, you know, because you mentioned Paul McGrath drew everything to play because that's where the glory is. Although, you know, you don't need to be a glory hunter, but that's where it happens, isn't it, Trevor?
Yeah.
You can do 100 hours. You can do 100 hours in the gym, innit, and be the strongest man in the gym, yeah. Nobody cares, do they?
Nobody gives a shit, yeah, and that's
exactly.
it. And it is. It's not. Glory's the wrong thing. It's when you can't do a thing that you used to love doing anymore. That's a fucking killer. And if it's at the level that you guys were at, I mean, I'm realizing at the age of 52 that I can't play the game the way I wanted to play, the way I used to play. But how much more of a kick in the face is it when you've had access to that stage? And it's not, like you say, it's not about the glory. It's about doing something at that level and then not being able to do it anymore. Of course, that should be every ex-player's biggest regret, is not being able to do it anymore. I don't understand any other way of thinking about it. But our modern squads are structured a bit different. And we have just recently had a window where a lot of frustration was expressed towards the owners and the people in charge of recruitment for not getting a body in where clearly there is something needed defensively there because of some of the issues that we've just alluded to. But there's an awful lot, I think, of people burying their heads in the sand and sticking their fingers in their ears and saying la, la, la when it comes to assessing where we are going to be next summer. We had that big summer. We're all excited about it. It hasn't gone the way that we'd wanted to go because it doesn't look like the rest of the squad was structured the correct way to embrace these new players and be able to continue on. There's also been a few things that we've seen, which would have been very difficult to quantify. The drop off in Mo Salah's form, objectively is difficult to quantify, considering he was the key man last season, like an all-time career season. It's not just that, it's across the board. And some of the guys found it hard to settle in and so on and so forth. But you also have lads like McAllister not doing what they were able to do. Up until very recently, we had Ibu Kanate not being able to do what he had been doing so well and so consistently for years. So there are a number of factors there. And I just think when you look at the contract situation now, with some of them, you look at the age profiles with others, there was a lot of talk about let's get in the likes of an Isak so that we can, and I was guilty of this, we can maximize the final years of Ali and Mo and Virgil. Now, first of all, before we even look at the squad, did you think that was a decent strategy to let's pack this squad out with some players that can maximize the potential of these world-class trio that we have while they're still at the club and performing in the way that they had performed last season? And if you did think that was a good strategy, do you think we got the right profile of player in to do that?
Was it the right strategy? Was it the right strategy to be aggressive? I think we criticised the amount of business that we did in the summer before, and I stand by that. You know, even in the summer, that I think we were reluctant. I think a lot of people were reluctant to save in the summer because there was a potential of this going on to be another 87, 88, isn't it? Where they just took off and the squad got together. I'm getting your cough now, Trevor.
Sorry, buddy.
So I don't know what to say about that, Trevor. It was risky. The strategy was risky. It hasn't quite come off as of yet, but I think it will do in the future. Did we get the right players? I do feel we get the right players. I do, however, think that those players to show what they're capable of is going to take a little bit longer than what we anticipated. We didn't read this. We didn't read for... I know Alexander Isak is injured, but we didn't read for Frimpong and Kirkes and Alexander Isak to have as little impact as they've had. That was absolutely not the plan. So that's a disappointing bit, isn't it? But I am a bit like the club, pretty calm that we got good players. We've got the potential to become great players, but at the moment they're just good players. So I do like that. I do, however, think that before we just start doing what we need to do next summer, and it could quite easily develop into another busy summer, I think we probably need to plan a little bit better than what we did last year.
Yeah.
It's almost as if we got this. You know, Michael Edwards, who's we got this, don't worry, trust us, yeah. And we did. I know those people who looked at it really in depth and went, I'm not convinced this is the right strategy. So I think we need to look at that, because there's every chance that with the players who can no longer be satisfied at Liverpool, and Curtis Jones falls into that, as does Endo, as does Robbo, Chiesa, just to name four. And going forward, you're even looking at people like Cody Gakpo and go, he's still getting his minutes, isn't it? But he's having less and less influence in the games. So maybe that's also a matter of time before we look at his position. On top of that, you've got Alisson Becker, which I never quite know where I stand with him in terms of, does he want to stay or does he want to try something else? Does he want to go back to Brazil? And of course, you've got Mo Salah, which is the biggest of all of them. In the summer, he'll be halfway through his 2-year contract. I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall on that meeting after Mo and his outburst after Leeds and what was actually said. You know, where should we go? We're moving on, and what we're led to believe is moving on. Then we're moving on to the summer, and then I don't know what was said in that meeting, but you can either say there was going, listen, we'll carry on as normal, see out your contract, and we'll carry on into the summer, and we'll have a look at it again. So when you look at that, Trevor, that's a lot of players, isn't it? That's without the ones who we're now getting put under pressure by the contracts running out. I haven't even mentioned those.
That's exactly it. And there's look, if a lad sitting in a field in Ireland can see that we probably needed a centre half, and we have been endlessly chasing a defensively minded midfielder for season after season after season. They were the ones that really needed to be added to the squad, and anything else was going to be a luxury, especially you were keeping hold of the players that we kept hold of. But we moved on quite a few, and we had the tragedy of the loss of Diogo Jota as well. So I guess maybe we cut them some slack for the planning as it went. But I think those two, missing out on the defensive-minded midfielder and still relying on Gravenberch as some kind of a six, I think that's daft. Similarly, not getting cover in that centre half position, I thought that was daft, and it's been borne out because McAllister's fall off has really led to an issue there. Gravenberch hasn't been excellent either, but let's take it section by section. Let's have a look at the profile of this squad. One of the words that we use on the transfer show a lot, Jan, is churn. Myself and Dave, because I do think that's a thing that's going to happen, that there'll be a lot of churn. So let's start with the goalkeeping positions. Now, currently on the books at the club, we have Ali, we've got Marilashvili, who's more than a number two, for being honest, Freddie Woodman, Armin Pesci, and Harvey Davies. And of course, we have a very good keeper that we can recall from a loan situation as well. I am like you in terms of this man here and wondering what it is that he's going to do next year, because we were hearing rumors last year that he'd be off and on his bike for this campaign. The fact that he's still around, I take, is a great bonus. He is the best in the world at what he does. I'd love to think he's going to stay there, but that makes me now wonder about how this man's going to feel about that, Georgi Marilashvili. Because he was clearly bought with the idea of stepping up. He was a lot of money, and he's a very, very good goalkeeper and will want to finally be given his chance to stake his claim as number one for Liverpool Football Club. So when you look at that, what's the likelihood, do you think, of Ali's departure? Are you hearing any of the rumours I was hearing? And if we were to go into next season with Alisson Becker not there, we obviously are going to have to recall a certain other fella, I think, to make him number two to Marilashvili. What are your thoughts around the goalkeeping situation when it comes to churn? Are we just sitting here crossing our fingers that Ali will stay around for another season?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the club, this is one area of the team where the club are thinking, we've got this.
Yeah.
Whatever, we've got this. I think what happens here, Trevor, is that if Alisson Becker comes to the club and goes, for whatever reason, I would like to move on. Out of respect, I would think that the club would do everything they can to put a deal in place so he can move on because of what he gives to Liverpool Football Club, but also because Liverpool Football Club would feel that it might just be reasonable business for them to move him on, get some money back in. Very well known that they are happy with our number two move up to number one. They're quite happy that he's more than capable. Having said all of that, I don't know what motivates Alisson, and I'm not talking about whether it's money or not. I'm talking about what club might motivate Alisson. Last year, or a while ago, I was hearing about Bayern Munich because of Manuel Neuer and his injury, and they struggled to find somebody. And I heard that Bayern Munich was quite keen on Alisson Becker. It's one thing them being keen; it's whether Liverpool want to do business with them, isn't it? So Marilashvili is not going to be happy if Alisson's still there in a funny way. Because the idea is sold to him. Obviously being first choice of Valencia and everything else, and come to Liverpool and you can sit on the bench for 2 or 3 years. He ain't going to be happy with that, is he? But I do think Alisson stays. I think he stays for another year, Trevor. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I mean, like I say, I think we're all hoping that's the case. Yaros comes into the equation, of course, and I don't know if it's been going as well for him lately as he'd have liked. Liverpool's loans have not exactly been stellar this season, the way they've worked out. But he did seem to me to be a very calm, kind of collected individual. I was very impressed by the little I've seen of him for Liverpool. So going forward into next season, if we did have to, if Ali decided it was his time to go, Marilashvili and Yaros, I think, would be a decent pair. But yeah, like you, very much crossing my fingers that the main man stays. So let's have a look at the next section of the big one in terms of the churn, potential churn area, which is now defense. And if we have a quick look at the squad here, well, there's a lot more questions than answers. So let's take it back to the start here, and we have a quick look. And we start off with Joe Gomez. Now, to be fair, you've done a bit of talking about Joe, so I don't want to make you repeat yourself. But if you were to look at Joe Gomez, we know that we've made a very high-profile signing. A very expensive young defender who has been bought at great expense, like I said. And I'm not saying it's a punt, but it's not risk-free. And he is not proven in the way that you want a fella that costs that much money to be proven. But he's coming in at that money to be very much to be part of the setup around the first team. Of course he is. Say your first choice 4 or 5. So if Joe Gomez, who has been linked with moves away, who nearly moved away to AC Milan at the last minute in the summer, was to go, let's just say that's the case, that Joe's decided, look, I need to play football. The captain's going to stay around. The Ibrahima Konate contract is such a strange situation. We did an entire show on it yesterday because we're now starting to hear some positive sounds around Konate's contract. Kirkes is just in the door and finally starting to show a little bit of what he was last season when he was so impressive that we spent a lot of money on him. Conor Bradley, I have no idea what Conor Bradley is going to be going forward for the club. He will have missed more games than he's been available for by the time he comes back by a considerable amount. And I don't know what that says, much as I like the player, about him in terms of reliability. Giovanni Leone, who was another really expensive kid. Again, you could say a punt, but highly scouted and very, very highly thought of. We heard what some of the great luminaries of Italian football were saying about him. And lo and behold, he showed it in his one appearance, which ended in a tragic injury. And we have no idea how he comes back from that because it is a career changer potentially. Andy Robbo, we know he wanted to go. He was even entertaining thoughts of leaving mid-season. He wants to play football. He believes he's a first-team footballer. I think the club will give him that chance. Frimpong will go nowhere. Rhys Williams might finally be allowed to leave the club. He's been held captive longer even than Nat Phillips. And Calvin Ramsey is just thoroughly unfancied by the current manager. Whether the manager changes is another thing. So there's a lot to put on your plate there. How many of those guys do you see being around at the club realistically next season? I'm putting out my own thoughts there, but it's your thoughts that people have tuned in to hear.
So I'm amazed that Joe Gomez is still at the club. I have to be totally honest. And if you're watching this, Joe, find somewhere, get some minutes in towards the back end of your career. It doesn't have to be in England. It doesn't have to be in the Premier League. You know, that's a very physical, demanding league. But find somewhere else to enjoy your football, because in the end, playing is what it's all about. As you flick through them, obviously Van Dijk, not a problem. Konate, I'm hearing the same thing as you. The club is very confident that he will sign and he will stay. Leone, not a problem on the long-term contract. Frimpong is the same. Robbo. I think the whole sort of, if Robbo's in any doubt about, you know, the importance and the enjoyment of playing, I think he's experiencing next summer with Scotland, you know, with the warm-up games for the World Cup and getting to play in, you know, these 3 big games with Scotland during the World Cup. I think that will make him think, I'm not going back to sit on the bench at Anfield. You know, it's about playing, isn't it? Where his ambitions still is, I don't know. We saw the boy Kieran Tierney leave Arsenal and go back to Scotland because that's what he wanted to do, yeah. And I could see Robbo doing something similar, you know, because he's obviously very proud Scottish, and he's done everything he needs to do down here south of the border. The boy Williams, wow, is he really still at Liverpool? It's quite incredible, isn't it? That Reece is still hanging around, hasn't found himself another club. That'll happen in the summer. Calvin Ramsey, I'm absolutely convinced the same thing will happen to him because he's unfancied, which to some people means the same as not quite being good enough. Then you got Conor Bradley. Conor's got a bad injury, Trevor. I don't know what will happen to Conor Bradley because he's got 4 years left of his contract, I think. But I think the club will buy a new right back. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah.
Because of their uncertainty about the physicality of Frimpong and the availability of Conor Bradley. What that means for the boys' future, I don't know, but I think the club will buy a new right back. Is that all of them, Trevor, or is there anyone else?
That's all of them, yeah. And I think you're right. I think it'll very much depend whether they get a sort of a Gertruda guy in, a squad with the idea of him being a squad player, or whether they buy a new up and comer like they did with Kirkes and say, right, you're the lad now. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I one last question for you, Nat. If we were to go into next season with 5 centre halves, Virgil, Ibu, hopefully, if he's kept and stays and likes his contract, Leone, Xhaka, and Joe Gomez.
I am not convinced, Trevor, that we'll sign another centre half.
No.
So we sign all the young ones. Yeah. The 3 young ones, one of them from Burnley and the other 2 from after they've done so well in one of the age group World Cups. But Kwanzaa, is he due back in the summer of 2027? That's where I put my money, Trevor.
Very, very, very interesting. Like you say, we have taken a punt on all those highly talented, highly rated kids. So maybe they will be going for it. It's just going into a season with Leone and Xhaka, who's unproven. Leone mightn't play till after Christmas. We don't know. It's. I hope we're not going to be doing more punting. Let's put it that way. Right. Let's look at the next line of the team in terms of where we might do some changes. Where there will absolutely be some churn. At least there's an awful lot to talk about, and that's in midfield. So lots to talk about here. Again, let me just set it up briefly. Poor Wataru Endo will likely not play football for Liverpool again. You would think he made, I think, only his second start for Arne Slot when he got injured the last day. And now I think his World Cup is under threat. So it's a terrible situation for that kid. I would be only delighted if he was still in the Liverpool squad going forward because I just like what he offers. I'm not saying he's a world beater, but I think he's got a fantastic attitude. I just don't believe he'll be here. Florian Wirtz will be. Dominic Szoboszlai, I think, does want to stay. There was a lot of nonsense going on from, I think, was the Hungarian coach who put it out there that Real are his dream club and always have been. They're the reason he wants to play football is to finally represent them. I'm not sure if that's a lot of guff. And Szoboszlai himself was saying all the right things, but let's see how that goes. Ali McAllister, you would not be surprised to see making a move because it seems to have gone a bit flat for him at the club, for himself personally in terms of his own form, and maybe he needs a new challenge. And we know from listening to his dad that he would be quite delighted with the idea of the challenge of Real or one of the other big Spanish clubs. Curtis Jones seems to be a little bit out of favour. There was some sort of falling out. We don't know the details of it, really. People are guessing at stuff. But I think he can count himself very, very unfortunate to not be one of the first names on the team sheet, especially when you consider the underperformance of the previous lad I mentioned and Ryan Gravenberch, who's also likely to stay around because realistically, where does Ryan go? I did hear fanciful stories linking in him yet again with Real Madrid, but Trevioni, I know for a fact from listening to quotes by some of the underage coaches, is very frustrated as his lack of time in the first team. Stefan Bajcetic, you feel that his time in the club is probably done. The rehabilitation, the misfortune that poor kid has had is ridiculous. James McConnell, does he come back and come in as a squad player next season? I don't know. Talk to us a little bit around this group, Jan, because there's a lot of potential churn here, I think.
There is some potential there, Trev, isn't there? McAllister, South American, massive, always a massive pull. The two big clubs in Spain, Barcelona and Real Madrid. And without being disrespectful to McAllister, but sometimes you'll just have things in your mind, isn't how your career is going to go. And I think Luis Suarez is probably the best example of that.
Yeah.
There was nothing we could do to satisfy Luis Suarez's wish and dream to play in Spain. Yeah. There was nothing. We didn't win the title when he was here, but it would have been no difference to what he wanted to do. And maybe McAllister is in the same boat, that there's nothing we can do apart from mainly enjoying while he's here. If it's in his head that he wants to do something else, that's what he will do. So then it all becomes about who's going to be prepared to pay for him, isn't it? But I think there's a chance that he might go. Absolutely. Curtis Jones has to be frustrated. He probably has to be more than frustrated. He probably has to be slightly disappointed as well that he's not getting more game time because of the way that some of the others are playing. And even the ones who are still playing okay look like he could do with a break. And I'm mainly talking about Gravenberch. It looks like he potentially do with a break every now and again. Because at the moment, obviously Szoboszlai is covering himself in glory. But apart from that, everything else is a little bit inconsistent, isn't it? The biggest problem we got, so never mind the contract negotiation we had last season, because that was with a minimum of 2.5 world-class players, wasn't it? Alisson, Van Dijk and Trent. Sorry, Van Dijk, Salah and Trent. The players that we're negotiating or starting to negotiate now don't have the same standing in the game as of yet, and whether they ever will, I don't know. I'm talking about Konate and Szoboszlai and people like that. But their agents, their camps are turning up at these negotiations, Trevor, representing a Premier League title-winning player. And that costs.
Yes.
That costs, Trevor. And you only have, and the only thing you can compare yourself to is Manchester City. Because they won 6 of the last 8, haven't they? So they're the only club you can compare yourself to. And the agents will be going, if you're a title-winning centre-half at Manchester City and play every week, this is what you're in. And that's what they'll be saying to them. Szoboszlai's agent will be going, what did Kevin De Bruyne or Rodri, what do they get? My client has the same importance to the Liverpool team. Szoboszlai, that's the biggest problem. That's going to be a massive problem, that trend, is that we've been able to have a certain amount of control over those contract negotiations. But now it's a little bit out there, isn't it? Because our better players are going, yeah, we want to stay. But where's the money that title-winning players get? And we're obviously very reluctant to pay it. So we're going to have problems with these contracts. They're not going to go as smooth as they normally do. But I do think that Szoboszlai and Konate will go free sign, I think. But it'll cost more than what we anticipated. It probably even borderline what we've been forced to pay, but we don't want to pay.
Yeah, I think you're right on all counts there. And if you were to sort of think about something, you've pretty much nailed on that for the defense. Well, for the goalkeeper line, we're just keeping our fingers crossed that Ali stays. And I don't think we'll be doing any signing with Yaros to recall. The defense line, you've said will likely sign a right back. I think you're right. And Xhaka is already in for the centre half group. In midfield here, there is the potential of at least a couple of those moving on, which will, of course, free up wages and possibly bring in transfer fees and stuff like that. And if they are high-profile players like McAllister or like Curtis, then you're looking potentially at Liverpool being able to sign someone that across this line. And I think I've said already on the show and a million times that there's a certain type that we're after. Whether they're available or not is another thing. The links with Adam Wharton are endless, and they seem to be too out there to be anything other than really very tangible and real. I wonder, like, this is going to sound daft to you, but is is an Adam Wharton type player enough, especially if we lose something from that? Do we need that more defensively minded individual in there?
I think we need 3 midfield players, Trevor,
Okay.
to be competitive. Do you think when you're watching Gravenberch and the struggles McAllister have got, do you think they can go from now to the end of the season, another season of having to play all our games? I don't.
No.
You know, I don't. So should one of Gravenberch won't go anywhere? Should McAllister go and maybe Curtis Jones? I think we need a minimum of 3. Adam Ward would be a great start, but I think we will need another 3. When you look at Manchester City, you know, when you go and I commentate Manchester City, and I go, who's going to be? I don't know. Is it Roger Nico? Is it Bernardo Silva? Who's playing in midfield? Is it Phil Foden? Shirky? They've got that many options, you know. And you go to Liverpool, and you go, who's playing? It's 3 or 4, isn't it?
Yes.
Obviously, like Gravenberch, McAllister, or Curtis Jones.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And if 2 of those are off, you need 3 in. You're right. That's it.
You know, Trevor, I just, you know, this is where I'm thinking it might need to be another big summer, and then they've got to try and convince the owners that this was a bit of a blip and we got things under control for the future, isn't it? Because we can't keep having summers like this, can we, Trevor? You know, but the summer after, we might have to look at Alisson going, and Van Dijk going, and Salah going. Have we got anyone to lend?
Well, let's take that last line, because you just mentioned the man himself, and that is Mo Salah, and it'd be daft not to look at the front line, even though it might ironically be the most settled of the groups. And here we are. So I'm going to put a question to you at the end of this, because it's doing my noggin in on a regular basis. Isak, we haven't seen. He's the club record signing by a considerable chunk. If he's fit, he plays, I imagine. Mo Salah, who knows what kind of a role he might have next season, if any. I was convinced that this summer was the summer he's going to go, and that 2-year contract was always a little bit of a smokescreen. So the club could get a fee, Mo could get 1 more season, everyone was going to be happy. That's where I always thought this was going to land, and I don't see any reason to change it. I don't see how Federico Chiesa stays around. Whether the manager, of course, is a factor here. We need to mention that, but we can't do or say anything about that at the moment. So we're just looking at the players. You don't see a world where Federico Chiesa stays around. Cody Gakpo actually interestingly linked with a move away, and you would imagine if we were going to increase the quality of the squad, it would be on the flanks, especially if Mo goes as well. Hugo Ekitike is going nowhere. Rio and Gamoa, especially if that pathway opens up a little bit more, will also probably go nowhere. So the question I wanted to put to you, man, is if we have a fit and firing Alexander Isak and a fit and firing Hugo Ekitike, both playing anywhere close to their peak performance, is there a world where they don't both play? And if they do both play, that means a structural change in the team, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah. And again, this is one of the meetings I would have liked to have been in, Trevor. Yeah. You know, that meeting when after having signed Hugo Ekitike, you then decide to spend the money on Alexander Isak. You know, how does that meeting go? So what is the plan now? You know, are we going to play both of them? In what structure can we actually play both of them? I think the possibly is a structure where you can play both of them. With Hugo Ekitike being on the left, but being totally different to certainly the way that Cody Gakpo plays on the left, but will be much more of a goal threat. Alexander Isak through the middle. You have, generally in terms of the midfield, I would like to see Adam Wharton. But the only real dream I have, Trevor, is that we just ring up Bayern Munich and go, Michael Olise. What do you want for Michael Olise? That's the kind of, you know, and they go, we want 120 million euros or whatever, and you go, that's who we get, yeah. And then Mo has a decision to make then, you know, because you're signing Mo's long-term replacement. And then Mo has a decision to make in the summer. Do you want to stay and fight? Well, you know, and that's what I would do. That would be my big dream, Trevor. That would get me. I've renewed my season ticket. No, that's what I'm saying. But you know what I'm saying, Trev? It's like sometimes you have this. A friend of mine had that same wish in the summer with Alexander Isak. He said, that's my dream signing, you know what I mean? And my dream signing for next year would be Michael Olise, you know. I just think the boy is so talented. He's the right age. You get him for at least in the next 8 or 9 years. And you work out even you've got to pay 150 million euros, you know. I think it's money well spent, isn't it? And then you make a decision. And again, I don't think the club is going to be running around trying to sell Cody Gakpo. But interest, and maybe even Cody Gakpo being interested, might just force them to make a decision. I don't think it's something that they're going to be actively looking at. But if somebody should come in and offer him, or he's saying, I want to try something else, it's definitely something we look at. Of that, I have no doubt. And coming back to Chiesa, if he has a little bit of, you know, if he has a little bit about him, you know, find somewhere in Italy to play. I know you can't take the song with you. The song stays at Anfield. So you'll have to have a shit song in Italian, but you'll just have to deal with that.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the Joe Gomez point that you made before. It's like you're too good of a footballer to be just on the fringes and not contributing. He is a good footballer, and people aren't seeing it, and his form isn't what it should be. And I feel very frustrated for the kid. He seems like a really good lad.
And obviously, Trevor, we're also looking at that wide man at Leipzig, aren't we?
Yes, Diomande.
And again, you called him a punt, yeah? That for me is a punt.
Yeah.
You know, Ulisse is not. Are we prepared to do punts at them figures? I don't know. But we are definitely looking at him.
Yeah, I believe the fee for Jan Diomande is worrying 100 million as well. So it's crazy times. But I suppose if you move off Mo Salah, you get his massive wages off, and you get a fee for him, and maybe someone like Cody Gakpo as well, a high-profile exit. Maybe there is a world where 2 of them come in, but Jesus, the churn potential is massive, Jan. Now, we have left ourselves in a little bit of a corner. I have left us in a little bit of a corner with our usual format of looking ahead to the Forest game. I don't care. I'm glad we did that. So I'm just going to quickly look and set up the Forest game, and then we'll just finish with a quick take and the predictions as usual. So let's just do that. Let's just give folks an idea of what it is the Forest have been doing of late by having a quick look at their recent results. And we can see that they have done reasonably well for themselves, but an awful lot of people are thinking that the form of late has been pretty horrendous. Last time out, which was Wednesday, was a 0-0 draw with Wolves at home. They went away to Leeds before that and lost 3-1. Before that, it was a 1-1 draw with Palace at the City Ground, a 4-0 win over Ferencváros before that, and a 2-0 away win at Brentford before that. Now, we know that they've had some serious managerial churn, but if we have a look at that last outing there against Wolves, and we look at the lineup in that particular match, the way they went with was Ortega in goals. They had Ola Aina and Nico Williams at fullbacks, Morato and Milenkovic centre half, Sangare and the much hyped Elliot Anderson linked with Liverpool in midfield, Omari Hutchinson, Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi and Luca up top. And then they can count on the bench on the likes of Dan Ndoye, Igor Jesus, Tayo Awani. They've got Nicholas Dominguez, Angus Gunn, Ryan Yates, Jair Cunha, James McAtee, and Luca Netz. I think it's fair to say that we've been impressed, Jan, with Forest over the last couple of years. The managerial situation seems to be more a reflection of the crazy town situation that they have with the owner more than anything else. When you look ahead to what this challenge poses us with the new manager bounce, and you did say that this lad, Vitor Pereira, is likely to have them playing a kind of ball that the fans are going to be liking, which will add to the challenge for Liverpool, no doubt.
I like him. He's not a manager that hangs around. close for too long because he has a tendency to fall out with people. Even at Wolves, he fell out with the fans in the end. But I think the players like him. I think he's a real sort of players manager. He'll come in and he'll be able to get his message across, and his message that he gets across is positive. You know, whereas you think like Sean Dyche's message would be a little bit negative, get men behind the ball, blah blah. This is positive. Let's play. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's play with some freedom. They are, without any shadow of doubt, the team in the bottom half that is underachieved the most this season. They got some really, really good players. What they'll also get is that the City ground will be rocking. You know, that no doubt about that. It'll be rocking. They'll feel, okay, now's the time. We're not below the line. We've got to stay above that line because they got a really difficult run to the end of the season. So they're going to need everything. So I think this has gone from this sort of Sean Dyche dull, you know, the football is dull, the atmosphere is dull. It's gone to, this is going to be a really energetic and high demanding game from the Liverpool players. I think all of a sudden now I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, I'm now looking at, and I know Sean Dyche was in charge when he won 3-0 at Anfield, but I'm looking at that kind of Nottingham Forest team again. You know, that quite capable, they'll have the energy back in their legs. This will be a difficult game for them.
Yeah, we know there's no point in talking too much about Liverpool because we know that the manager's told us he likes to play the same players when he can. So it's going to be pretty much the same 11. That will have its usual frustrations. People will roll their eyes when they say Cody Gakpo starting. People will roll their eyes if they see Dom Szoboszlai at right back. Maybe Curtis Jones did enough to get that spot. Who knows how it works out, but it will be essentially the same Liverpool 11 that you can predict. So with that in mind, let's just get straight to the final part of the show where you say how you think that one's going to go, buddy.
I think it's going to be one of them games where they're going to be up for it, you know. But what's in our advantage is that they're playing Thursday night. They're in Europe Thursday night, and they'll lose a lot of energy for that one game as well. And I think the longer this game goes, the more it becomes our game. So I'm going to go Forest 1, Liverpool 2. On top of that, they got a real problem scoring goals. So I think we'll beat them 2-1.
Yeah, that sounds about exactly what I'm hoping for as well. Exactly, actually, the scoreline I was hoping for. So all square with you on that one. We will leave it at that, buddy. Thanks for taking the time, as usual. I won't even give you any outros. I've kept you longer than the hour. Just see we're scraping over it. So thanks to everybody for listening this week. We do appreciate your ears and your eyes. Thanks to Jan, of course, as always. And he and I will be back with you next week to do what we can here to keep you entertained. So until then, good luck.